welcome to Worth the War. My name is Kimmy. Today we're going to talk about teaching your teens about control issues in love and relationship. Worth the War is rethinking love. We're helping to prepare people for healthy love and relationship and avoiding abuse. If you think we can do a better job in that area than we're doing now, then you found the exact right channel. Let's dig right into the content. If there's one thing we know about abuse, it's that it goes hand in hand with control. No matter what kind of the 5 kinds of abuse that people endure, control is often the beginning and the vehicle that abuse is carried out in. So it becomes really important for us to understand it and to make sure we pass that knowledge down to our kids. As parents, we want to be on top of the risks for our children, but often we're lulled into a sense of safety by looking at our kids' friend group or kind of looking around and thinking, oh, everything looks like it's fine. But the statistics show that it's really not fine. Down below, I'll put the sites for you, but 33% of adolescents are going to be experiencing in their dating relationship verbal, physical, sexual, or emotional dating abuse. 1 out of 3. And out of those who experience rape or sexual abuse, 50% will attempt suicide. When we look at statistics like that, everything's not okay in the dating relationship arena that they're entering out to. So we need to be on top of the things that we can do to help them be prepared for the dangers that are out there. What we're going to do in this video is first we're going to look at ways that we can make sure that our kids can identify controlling behaviors in other people so that they get that sense of knowing what that looks like. The second thing that we're going to do is look at a few ways that we can be sure that our kids understand when they're exhibiting controlling behavior so they can stop those behaviors before they become a problem for them. As with most things with parenting, everything starts with looking at ourselves. So we have to ask ourselves as parents, are we setting a good example when it comes to control? And I can't imagine a more challenging place for us to test ourselves than in our own parenting. Our kids see right through us. They see what's great, they see what's not. So we need to be able to do the same so that we can really get into their hands the tools that they need to have healthy relationships. How do you handle disappointment in your spouse, in your friends, in your kids? Do you find yourself using things to manipulate anybody, any of the above? Do you find yourself using your power as a parent to manipulate them? Do you find yourself responding to disappointment over choices that they make in ways that are not necessarily healthy? If you find yourself doing any of those things, it's a really great opportunity for you to realize that maybe you've fallen into some habits as a parent that you need to get out of. Because not only does it harm your relationship with your kids, it may very well harm your kids' relationships with the people they care about later. It is always a good step as a parent to reevaluate, see within ourselves our failings, and apologize to our kids when we see that. There's no shame in realizing that maybe we leaned a little bit too much into controlling behaviors. And the best thing that we can do when we do that is admit it, change it, and let our kids see that it didn't work for us and it's not going to work for them. Let's look at 3 things that you can give your kids in their own hands before they leave the house to be able to identify people who use control in an unhealthy way in their relationships. The first one is, how do people deal with the ups and downs that are normal in everybody's life? Do they have out of control responses? Do they have physical outbursts, emotional outbursts? Do you see them running toward getting themselves a substance because they need to make themselves feel better? Do they withhold affection or communication because things aren't going the way they want it to, either with you or with life in general? These kinds of things show an unhealthy level of control. It shows them spinning out because they didn't have control over something. Make sure your kids understand that. The second thing that you can teach your kids to look for is the idea and the concept of security. Security is the baseline of healthy hearts, healthy behavior. So if somebody is exhibiting insecure persona, it will often come out as being controlling. It'll come out in being really arrogant or ego-driven because they're just not really solid in who they are. So we have to look for things that will tip off that this person really doesn't have a strong sense of themselves and a strong sense of security. And self-control is part of that. So when we don't have that, we tend to want to control others because we can't control our own view of ourselves and our own lives. Do they seem to project a false ego? They act like they're so confident and they're so sure of themselves, and yet really deep down you can kind of see that unraveling when you get close enough. Are they possessive with your time in your life because controlling you gives them a sense of calm and peace? Being secure allows other people around you to exist and to be themselves and to be at ease. Somebody who is insecure within themselves is going to turn to controlling behaviors, and these are some of them. So if you can tip your child off to kind of be looking for these kinds of insecure behaviors and responses, they're going to go a long way to helping them point out who might just have a problem with controlling in their relationships. The third thing that we need to make sure that our kids understand is the practical methods of control. They need to understand that micromanaging somebody's time, their finances are easily identified. But some of the harder things to notice are, does this person in a roundabout way actually tell you what you think? Often you'll find that people will say things like, well, you don't really think that, or, oh, I know better than that. You say that, but you mean. Be really good at making sure your kids can identify when somebody's trying to not really listen to your child, but really convince them of what they should think. Often these people just talk, so that there's really not a lot of time of thought or response. And there's a reason for that, because they're not really interested in the heart of your child or the thoughts of your child. They're interested in molding your child. The same can be true of any of us. We have to be really aware of the fact that conversations and communication has to be two ways. If it's not, that's a red flag. When your child leaves time with someone, ask them not only, what did you find out about the person you were with, but what did they find out about you? If the answer is really lopsided, help your child see that maybe this relationship isn't as healthy as they think it is. So we have 3 very practical ways that you can identify, and you can teach your kids to identify controlling people when it comes to their responses to life and to us. Now we're going to turn to 5 things that you can do that will help you keep an eye on how controlling you are and how controlling your kids are by having them answer these questions. Some are easier to answer than others, but they're worth the time. And they're good to check in on ourselves every once in a while so we don't get going down a bad path. The first question that we should teach our kids to think about when it comes to, rather they're leaning into controlling nature when it comes to their relationships, is the how and why of their communication. Have them ask themselves, why do they communicate? Is it to develop a connection or is it to achieve a goal? Ask them how they communicate. Are they aggressive? Do they talk over people? Do they try to push an agenda? These 2 answers are really important in how they'll connect to people. So make sure they ask themselves, how and why do they communicate? The second question that you can teach your kids to really think about when it comes to how controlling they are in their relationship is, how critical are they? Criticism is just another method of control for a lot of people. Illuminating for your child what kind of disposition they have when it comes to their relationships could be a game changer for them. Are they constantly looking for things in other people where they failed them? Are they pointing out where people didn't do things the way they wanted them to do, or they should have been done? If somebody has a critical heart, a critical spirit, they often are trying to mold somebody into something that will no longer be criticized, but it usually is a goal they can't achieve anyway. So ask your child, where are you on the criticism scale? How often do you point out when somebody does something right? How often are you looking at the things you appreciate in people? If they are way toward the critical scale, that could be a red flag for your child, for us as adults as well, that we're sliding into methods of control that are unhealthy. How accepting are we of people who are different from us or aren't serving us in any way? These kinds of questions are really critical when it comes to how we interact with other people, and it'd be a great tool in the hands of our kids. The third thing that we can ask our kids to check on themselves is, are they managing their expectations? If their expectations are guiding their relationships, they're going to find themselves often wanting to control others and being unhappy with other people. But if instead they guide them and they choose to have reasonable expectations of other people, they're going to be released to really enjoy people for who they are. The fourth thing that our kids can really check themselves on is, how flexible are they when things don't go their way, and how do they respond to that? That should give them a good sense of whether or not they're trying to control their surroundings and the people in it. The fifth check that we want to make sure that our kids can do, and it's so important, is making sure that we do a double check on where we're placing our value. People who need to control other people often aren't satisfied with themselves, and it's often because they put their value in their externals, the things that are temporal. It might be a grade point average, it might be the way that they look, it might be who's on their arm, it might be what they have in their bank account. Bottom line, make sure your children understand that their value is intrinsic. They were born with it, they can't lose it, they'll always have it, and they don't have to hold on or change anything to be valuable. If they can grasp that, even if they struggle with some of the other ones, they are well on their way to not having problems with control coming from them in their relationships or accepting control from others. So we achieved our goal. 4 ways we can teach our kids how to identify, control, and unhealthy relationships. 5 ways we can test ourselves and teach our kids to do checks on themselves on where they are on the controlling spectrum of relationships. Down below, I'm going to cite a video that I did teaching teens and tweens how to love healthy. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here. I know there's lots of other channels you could be at. Please subscribe and like and engage so we can get to know one another and continue to build this community. Thank you and have a great rest of your day.